to realize the ancestors are in the rock. They're
Mm.
millions of years old in these crystals, in these rocks, in these plants, in these feathers. In my deerskin bundle for my obsidian pipe, there's millions of years old of teachings that have no language called English. They have no language called Q. They have no language called Ki. They have no language. They have sound. They have whispers. They have. And we have to find that way. And so the grief wheel. So with permission and respect to my motherline and my fatherline, the first shamans and the medicine people and the Shambhala warriors from which this teaching comes. Slow down. Sit on the back of a turtle. Ride the turtle as you go around the wheel. When you need to retreat, go within. When you're ready to move on, move on. It's your rhythm. Trust your rhythm. Trust your journey. And know that you're loved. Forever, unstoppable, joyously loved.
Between you and me, right where you are right in this moment, is exactly where you were meant to be.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to the Joygasmic Life Podcast. I am your hostess, Elena Harder, and I am so glad to have you here today. If you are an awakening woman, a conscious mother, a woman on a journey to bring about the best for your family and create an enlightened experience of being a child and a woman and a mother and partner in your world, I absolutely I'm so grateful and so glad that you have found your way here. This podcast collects not only my own personal stories, things I would have done better had I known better, but also the beautiful stories of many hundreds of other women and men who have been through the consciousness awakening journey, who are here to share their stories, to inspire you to know that you can recover from mental health challenges, from postpartum depression, from challenges with traumatic births, and just the life in 21st century, as well as beautiful, actionable tips, exercises where we walk you through practical things that have really helped us, and the journey of becoming a joygasmic mother, one who handles absolutely every challenge with grace and ease and understands that everything is here to awaken her deeper, to create more empowerment and more pleasure in her life, even the challenging things. So that sounds juicy. Listen up, because we have got a wonderful episode for you today.
Fully harnessing the joygasmic potential of your body and yourself. Anything is possible, and especially we are here to tell you that deep and fulfilling love is possible and is available for you when you choose that for yourself. Welcome. Today's guest is Grandma Kaariina. She is a beautiful medicine woman that has traveled the world. I met her in the mid-2000s and teens in Mexico on Christmas Day in a beautiful celebration of life, and she just blew my socks off. And since then, I've had the opportunity to avoid her teachings passionately, and then recently coming back into connection with that. And she's had the opportunity to sit at the feet of many masters, many elders, many teachers and medicine people from many different traditions. She's a certified Kaariina Reiki master teacher and offers certification in kinesiology, bloodline shamanism, carrying the Golden Reindeer Moon Lodge teachings from her motherline, and genetically rooted in Mongolia. She was initiated as an elder in 2013 by Abuela Margarita and received full acknowledgement as a teacher with her own teachings. Since the mid-60s, when she worked as a counselor in high schools, where she really learned what it is to be loving unconditionally, to the many men's groups, women's groups, full lodges, sweat lodges, and way of counsel that she's shared along the way. She's initiated and opened many opening circles and closing circles for many festivals, which is another place I re-encountered her. And She has much, much wisdom to share. So I welcome you to the path with Grandma Kaariina. I invite you to continue expanding and exploring your relationship with her if you feel called to. The first part of this podcast is an inquiry into sort of the ancestral roots of grief and trauma and why our ancestors and parents haven't been able to do this work, what the importance of us doing this work is now to sit with our grief and to be in that, and some of the journey that Kaariina has been on, some of the journey that I have been on in terms of transforming and shifting these things. And then in the second part of this podcast, she takes us through a shamanic ritual of walking the grief wheel, which I would recommend that you pause, take your time, make sure you have dedicated time and space to do that, and even set aside some more time than we take in this and really allow yourself to be walked through the grief wheel. It's a very profound process, and you'll get to see the tears in my eyes as she walks us through this beautiful, beautiful experience. So I hope that you enjoy and enjoy the episode. Thank you.
All right, so here we go.
Yeah.
Ancestors, thank you so much.
As I dance on the spiral through the passage of these rites, with the wisdom of the cycle and the mother blood that gives me life, in the waking of her daughter, in the bearing of these bones to the birthing waters, where I find myself reborn. I honor my lineage, as I honor my lineage, as I honor my lineage, I honor my lineage, as I dance on the spiral through the passage of these rites, with the wisdom of the cycle and the mother blood that gives me life, in the waking of her daughters, and the bearing of these bones to the birthing waters, where I find myself reborn. I honor my lineage, I honor my lineage, as I honor my lineage, I honor my lineage, as I dance on the spiral, dance on the spiral, as I dance on the spiral, dance on the spiral.
much to Myra Stark. Thank you so much, Kaariina, for being here today with us to share ancestral knowledge about the grief wheel, about our wombs, about ancestral healing. And I'm so, so grateful to have you here today. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. My purpose is being fulfilled.
Thank you. Before we dive, I know we're going to dive into some beautiful things today, but before we dive into all of that, can you give us just like a brief condensed version of how you got to this place of teaching women and teaching people about these traditional paths?
Okay, I'm just going to say a very powerful word, Elena. It's murder. Murder and suicide. So we are awakened by violence, are we not?
Absolutely. My path, for sure.
And we're awakened to what is our responsibility to violence and what is our ability to respond to violence. So in my lineage, in both my paternal grandmother and my maternal grandmother, there was violence. And as a little kid, I didn't know that, but I instinctually knew it. I didn't know it here because it was denied. But instinctually in my embodiment, I knew something had gone wrong. Something was awry, let's put it that way, that the line of communication wasn't straightforward. So when I'm a traditional healer, so I've received the traditional initiation as a true full-blooded healer. So when my paternal grandmother, Fanny Amanda Niaminen, to whom I dedicate these teachings, and my maternal mumu, Maria Josefina Huki Hautala, to whom I dedicate these teachings, from whom I received the antlers, by the way, the Sama antlers in the reindeer people. When I was a year old, my paternal grandmother died of a broken heart. She was 49. She died on July 11th. I turned 1 on July 18th, 1949. Now, you need to remember context is everything for this conversation about grief. The context then was still the ending of the war, the Second World War. The context was for Finlanders who came from Karjala, from Northwest Finland. It was a place of coming to North America, coming specifically to Canada to take refuge from the Finno-Russian War, from the First World War, from the Second World War, and in between that, the Great Depression. And then after that, I mean, we've gone into the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Middle East War, the Cold War. So my work has been to end war.
Thank you.
At the level of the vagina, at the level of the cervical ring, at the level of conception, at the level of really understanding and appreciating the importance of the female as sacred, and the womb as sacred, and the male coming from the female, not the male dominating over the female. So when I say Fanny Amanda Diaminen died of a broken heart, she died of a broken heart despite the fact that she was totally gifted. She was a genius entrepreneur. And when she came from Finland with my father at 1 year of age in 1925, I was just calculating this yesterday for the show. What I realized, 1925, so they would have come over from the Baltic, so across the Baltic Sea, and just, here's the resin of the amber, clear all the negativity from the womb chakra. So realize that many people died aboard those boats. Many people died. So my father was a year old. So that journey would have taken 2 or 3 months.
Wow.
And many people died. And there wasn't a lot of food. So her village really supported her and packed a lot of food for her. But she came with 1 suitcase and a 12-month-old baby boy, my father. So think about the sisu, the persistence, the consistency, I am going to stay alive for my cub, and damn it all, I am going to make sure my cub thrives. So my fierceness for my cubs and my grand cubs and my life and my spirit grand cubs is because of these grandmothers, specifically her. So when she died of a broken heart, she died during the night of July 11th into July 12th. Now, she had babysat me, and it was the first time that my parents had gone out since I was born. So you know what that's like. It's like, woohoo! So Sault Ste. Marie, where could they go out to? I think they probably went to Gore Street to have a root beer float and maybe a movie. Right. And they came to pick me up at the Nicolette House, which is where we were living. We were living in the apartment at the basement or in the foundation. So that's important. I have a strong foundation. And she was living on the third floor in a suite of rooms that had been renovated for her. And she had bought the hotel. Now think about this. She had bought the hotel in so my dad would have been 9. So 1933, my grandmother and grandfather divorced in South Porcupine, Timmins, Northern Ontario. And with her share of the money, she bought Nicolette Hotel in Sault Ste. Marie, in Fintown. Now, how many women get money from a settlement and buy a hotel?
Entrepreneurial women, that's who.
Entrepreneurial women. And a boarding house. It was a boarding house. And now she vowed when she came from Finland and settled in South Porcupine, and my grandpa Toivo had been working in the gold mines, in Timmins gold mines. And this is all relevant to the cycles of our lives and the ages of our lives and how we are the ancestral initiations. We live this. It's in our blood. It's in our bloodline. It's in our bones. And so we can't get to orgasm or joy until we go through the grief of what has been missing. And what has been missing is the storytelling. What has been missing is the sound. What has been missing is the silent scream. What has been missing of just, bow down and just do the work. No. What's missing is the pain. What's missing is honoring the pain that our parents and grandparents persisted through so that we could breathe life in this moment. Yeah. And so she bought that hotel inspired by what Grandpa Toivo had agreed to set up in South Porcupine, which was a boarding house for migrant Finnish workers. It was Finns sticking together with Finns. Yeah. So it's like the Netherlands, it's like when your Belgique or your Francois from French from France or you're French from Quebecois, there is pay attention to family, pay attention to your lineage. Yeah. And so she bought a boarding house with Grandpa Toivo, and it was a 2-story big boarding house with, 5 or 6 bedrooms. And she had an agreement. Everything in relationship is by agreement. Everything in lived experience is through agreements. Grief is through an agreement. We create grief through our agreements with not necessarily our divine, but on the horizontal level. And so she created a boarding house. My grandpa built this great big plank of a table in the dining room. And there was a small living room. In those days, the dining room and the kitchen were the biggest rooms in the house. And there was one bathroom, no flush toilets. These are the times that we come from. These are the seeds of our soul bodies, and these are the seeds of a teaching. And if we don't hear these stories and realize the moral equipment, the ethical alignment that we're coming into this planetary dimension with, we don't fully realize what we're transmitting to our babies and to our children. And so we are the medicine of these stories of our grandmothers. So my big remembering of her, not only through the transmission of being her first grandchild and her only grandchild, because she died before the others were born, and I have her engagement ring from Grandpa Toivo. So I feel like I carry both of them in my heart space. She fed the Finnish migratory people that came to work in the gold mines. She fed them. And I remember in my second marriage with the wood stove saying to my second husband, I need to get a great big soup pot. And I realized I was my grandmother. I need to have a huge big soup pot, and I need to starting in end of October, beginning of November, keep the soup on the wood stove.
Yeah.
That's my grandmother.
Yeah.
I need to have another pot for tea. That's my grandmother. Now, Finns are notorious for black coffee. So I just bought myself a small camping pot to remember this podcast to coffee. So I came from a place where in Karjala there was no shame about bearing the fruit from her pelvic basin called my dad Pentti, and there was no shame about Toivo being fathered by a mystical Russian soldier. My great grandmother was from Karjala. My great grandfather was a Russian soldier, a very strong mystic. And there was no shame about that because the village always embraced all of it. There was no like taboo. Oh my God, my great grandmother's now pregnant with Grandpa Toivo, and the Russian soldier is a Russian soldier. I feel like my great grandparents made love to end the war. And just let that land. So making love, the joy of that orgasm is to end war, is to end the artificial boundaries called Russia and Finland. It's to end the war. It's to end treaty rights. And, I was listening to a young Aboriginal girl yesterday, a woman, really profound woman, from way up north of Alberta, outside of Fort McMurray, and absolutely fierce mama, absolutely fierce. And she had great stories about her grandpa. Great stories. Like, where are our great stories? Where are the great storytellers? You can't have joygasm without having the grief into joy. That's just the way stories are. There's a beginning, middle, and the end is like, well, that's the end, but it's also the beginning of another story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I'm curious about this journey from pain to joy. This is something that I've been really fascinated with in my life. And definitely at one point I was like, it's all about the joy, F the grief, right? Just pursue the joy. And very humbly over the last 10 years, it's been like, oh, no. You got to go through the pain to get to the joy. You got to release and let go all of that. And so I'm curious about what you've learned in terms of that transmutation. What does it take to actually do that transmutation, to be willing to do that transmutation? What kind of support do we need?
Well, I think in 1949, when my mummo Fanny died, that my father lost his main support, because crossing over the North Atlantic and landing in Canada and taking a train from Halifax all the way to Northern Ontario, my Mummo Fanny was my dad's go-to. And we need go-tos in grief. When we step into that, and we all are surrounded by pain bodies, by the way, there's no avoidance of the pain body. It's just finding someone to presence the pain body who's beyond the pain. And I think that's the role of an elder, and that's the role of a grandmother who tells medicine stories and smudges and carries a pipe and carries the eagle feather. That's the journey to being an elder, is not to deny that. And when my Mummo Fanny died, my father's grief was beyond the beyond. And my mother never understood it, because she was 18 and he was 24, but she did not have a passage through that darkness, through that Baltic Sea, through that bowels of the boat where people were dying or sick or, suffering from scurvy. And Momo was my dad's go-to. And you have to have one person. All my life, I've always known there's only one person that you need as a go-to.
Yeah.
Everybody's got to have one go-to. And the suicide is because there's no go-to. And it's a slow suicide. It's either slow. Women tend to slowly kill our spirits, and that's suicide. Or it's a quick suicide. Men take the gun to the head, or take a rope to the throat and hang themselves. So I have several experiences of that from Finntown and from my mother's side of the family. And so this war is why joygasm and why orgasm and the orgon, Wilhelm Reich's term for the organic dimension of life force. Yay, yes.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Yes. So that's why we're doing podcasts like this. It's why Maria Stark sings that song. It's why Maria and I offered for 3 years at Spirit Weavers to a gathering of 1,400 women, and it got more and more and more. It started with 800 women, ended up with 1,400 women by the time we left. And we would work in the North Meadows with this grief wheel.
Mm.
And she would sit in the center and I would sit in the North because I'm from the North and because it's the adult role of the North. And this grief wheel is a Shambhala warrior training, and not enough people have training.
Indeed.
So not enough people have training in understanding that life is a palliative care unit experience.
Oh my God, yeah. I'd never heard it said like that. But
I've never said it like that. This is a unique moment. But that's the reality of it, is it not? Is it like, if we could understand that instead of taking women who are pregnant to hospitals to labor and deliver in a sterile environment, and taking people who are dying to palliative care in a sterile environment, if we could just midwife life and death all in home and be fed like my mumu fed the village, and like my other grandmother baked and cooked for our hotel, the Nicolette House in Sault Ste. Marie. My family were entrepreneurs. They were bridge makers and they were bridge builders. They were swam and siltas. And we carried this sisu, this, no matter how long we lived, 49 years or 56 years or 57 years or 84 years or almost 90 years, it didn't matter. We were persistent and consistently giving so that we could feed our villages and that our children would receive a message or a mnemonic or an echo that said, this life is a privilege. This life is a gift. And you only need one go-to. And if it's the mumu, so be it. I'm now known as a Isomumu, which is a great grandmother, because I carry the Ana frequency of the Huki lineage. And so that grief was very much part and parcel of my seed from my father. Yeah, that was his seed. And when his mom died, when Mumu died, my mother didn't understand why he hatcheted the door down to get in to find his mother dead. My mother didn't understand my father's grief. My mother didn't empathize or appreciate, because she so wanted to leave her mother and father. At 9, she knew there was violence. At 9, she knew there was sexual abuse. At 9, she knew that there had to be another way. So I inherited that as well, find the other way. Yeah. But she did not own up to her own pain body.
Right.
She avoided it.
Yeah. And what happens, what in your understanding, like when the previous generations don't own up to the pain body, what happens to the children of those?
It's exponentialized.
It gets bigger.
It gets bigger. Okay. It's like, okay. My granddaughter and I made this like, a gushy mushy stuff with borax. We saw it on Emily's science experiment on the TV. Yeah. And so we made this, and we had no idea that it would amplify itself. So we had, it's like kombucha, it's like, okay, we had just this little bit of gushy mushy stuff. And then we went out and played, and we came back and it had filled the bowl and started dripping over. And so that's what happens to the pain body that's denied. So it needs to have a transformer that says, I'm willing to not be afraid. I'm willing to love the pain anyway. It needs to have a transmutator, like an Om Tara. It needs to have a mutant ninja, a warrior that's willing to go in to cut the ties of denial and to end the disillusionment that, oh, well, just, it's gone. She's dead. Like, just let it go. Bullshit on that. No. I'm going to step into the middle of the grief. I'm going to step into the middle of the gushy mushy stuff. I'm going to step into the the sponge of the kombucha, and I'm going to drink of this because there's something happening here and it's percolating and I've got to let it come. And so the next stage is the transfiguration. So we're walking a wheel. The transfiguration is the ego getting crucified. So the ego says, okay, there's a thief over there. You know, Jesus was a great crucifixion, and it was a model for what we need to learn in this day and age. We really need to get this message that over 2,000 years ago, we had a model for Christing, for a crystal clarity of one's purpose of oneness. We had a model for that. And so he looks to his right and he sees a murderer, and he looks to his left and he sees a thief. And then he looks down at his feet down at the bottom of the hill, and he sees his mother, and he sees his beloved brother John, and he says to John, there too is your mother. Now understand this, Mary John, Mary Joanna. You get it? You have to really understand the preciousness of these teachings, because everything is related to grief. Everything is related to sorrow. Everything is related to regret. Everything on top of that becomes an addiction, a running away from. Yeah. It becomes a codependence. I can't ever live alone. It becomes a slow suicide or a quick murder. It becomes escalated into conflict, separation, divorce, and war. Now, if you follow that path, you realize grief is a way to peace. If you follow the way to Jesus' path, and, you know, I used to say the front seat of my car, called Ford Focus on Freedom, was the passenger seat was always sat in by Jesus Christ. And I have a picture of him on the wall from Maui, Hawaii. Now, you know, there's many Christids, you know, and I danced the Aramaic universal dances of peace in the Lord's Prayer. And so I've looked at pictures of Jesus, and they're swarthy Aramaic images of Jesus. You know, he's not tall, blonde with blue eyes looking like my dad, or, you know, the finished Jesus, but there are many experiences of that. And we have to understand that these are rites of passage. These are part of the cycles of life. These are spiral dances. We have to understand this. This is not a linear path. This is a path of descent and a path of ascension, and it's too much horizontalness. And when we go horizontal, the great Jesus teaching was, I am a thief. I am you. I have stolen. Now, in this lifetime, we have stolen the forest from the future of our children. We have stolen fresh water from the future of our indigenous elders. We have stolen and extracted the diamonds from the diamond coast of Africa. We have stolen Africans and taken them to Caribbean and enslaved them. So I could go on and on about that, but I'm absolutely fierce that we make all these connections. And so now we are also murderers. Who have we murdered? We've murdered our own creative spirit. We've murdered truth tellers. We murdered Jesus, but we murdered a whole lineage of truth tellers, Mahatma Gandhi. We murdered Martin Luther King. We murdered John F. Kennedy, who made an effort to tell truth. He made an effort to bring Camelot to the White House. We killed Indira Gandhi. We killed the woman Pakistani prime minister. So those are high level murders, but they're also very slow murders. Like my mumu on my mother's side, Maria Josefina Huki, Hugh, which is the sound to release grief, by the way, interesting. So I come by it naturally. Hugh, key, which are the keys to the universe, and the universal life body, which is energy, vibration, and frequency. So this is my genetic predisposition to do this work. So just know that's why it's so natural. You know, if it's natural, it's the work to do. You know, our prayer today ought to be, let me, Creator, do only the work that is mine to do, not anybody else's. I'm not here to dominate anybody else. I'm here because I'm walking an equally shared path with those who carry this work. And I'm carrying this work for those who have forgotten the work, which is to end the war by coming back to the orgasmic truth. It starts with conception. It starts with our first experience of sexuality. And so my mom died at 56, and I knew at 15 the night that she died. I knew she was dying. And my grandfather refused to bring her to the hospital, and all her 5 children gathered around her, and she died at home. So essentially, they all midwifed her death.
Mm-hmm.
But what they did not speak was he slowly had murdered her. And she slowly, because she had converted to Lutheranism in Northwest Finland, she had left the shamanic bloodline of the reindeer clan. They had become agriculturalists rather than migrant nomads and following the reindeer herds. So she felt guilty that she had left Finland at 18. No accident that 9 and 18 are very significant numbers in my life. And she had to cross the Baltic Sea from Turku and the old capital of Finland, and landed in Montreal and taken a train, lots of trains to Sault Ste. Marie, and then to northern Ontario to Costa, where her brother had sent her $100 to come and cook in a logging camp. So I'm fierce about logging. I'm fierce about the forests. If you look at the iterations or the echoes of our biographies, you'll see it in the biology. So all disease is caused by an untold biography. All disease. And so how do you transcend this? How do you become Buddhic? How do you sit and just be still? And how do you sit and just observe and witness from the back of your skull? You can only do it when you share your story, when you go to your go-to and start talking. And you go to the go-tos before your go-to and listen to those go-tos. And so listening and communicating becomes part of another wheel, which is called the commitment wheel. And so commitment, communion, communications build community. So I come from a community. I come from Fintown. I come from Finn villages. I come from momos that fed the villagers, that fed the migratory workers, men and women alike, that cared for the children, that wanted their children to be able to stand on their own 2 feet, and saw and got great pleasure in seeing the genius and the gifts of children. Great pleasure. It was watching with these eyes of, wow. And I remember looking at my daughter when she was less than a year old. I have a picture of me looking at her face going, wow, I can't believe you chose me. And both my children have said to me, and this is a gift for all women listening to this podcast, your children never would have chosen another mother. And the greatest gift that my children have given me is I would never have chosen another mother. You're the only mother I would ever have chosen. And understand choice. Grief is because we don't realize our choice points. Grief is because we decide to not look at the pain. We decide we're not going to go to the cemetery and do ceremony. We're not going to touch dead bodies and caskets. We're not going to ask questions like, why did they put makeup on my mumu? She never wore makeup in her whole life, but there she is lying in a casket with makeup on. Why do they do that? Why did you put makeup on my mother when she was dying? Why did you do that? It's like we don't ask the questions, even if it's years after the death. We have to ask the questions. Find someone to do the soul inquiry and to grieve.
We don't have to, like you said, the grief continues to exponentialize until somebody's willing to face it. And I think especially in this generation, women like me, women like you, men who are willing to partner with us or who are doing their own work on their own, there really is this calling to do that work, to create that work. I remember in separating with a partnership, there was this sense, it's like my heart ripped out of my chest, and I felt like I was grieving every woman who had lost a partner in the world wars. And I was like, that's really big. Like, that's so big. But when we're willing to, when one person is willing to really step into that grief, it's like all of the unprocessed, the tendrils, all the other women, all the other people who had touched his life, all the other people who had touched my life, they're all willing to just pour through and be like, yes, we're here to be healed. We're here to be released. We don't want to stay in this, this stuck grief cycle somewhere between worlds. We want to really pass through and be in a new place. And It can be tough, but it's tougher to stay at like 50% grief for 10 years than it is to dive all the way deep for half an hour or an afternoon or whatever and just really pass it through. Like, let's let it all through right now, and then become, reborn, move back into that joygasmic space, become brand new without that grief, without the grief of the past, without the grief of the ancestors on that particular topic, right?
Yeah. Wow, I love your story. Thank you. And I just want you to touch down into, the choice of your mother and the choice of your community background gave you, in Finnish, we would say the sisu, the persistence to let it all come through. And that was your crucifixion. That was your time on the cross. It came through from the divine Father, the divine Holy Mother that you are, the divine mother that your mother is. It came through the divine, sacred, divine light through your body so you could experience all of that. And not very many people open themselves to the possibility that this is what's going on. And I want to really point out, and thank you for choosing your mother, by the way, and thank you for Alex for choosing you, and thank you for this current baby, whatever it may be named, for choosing you as well. And for the men that really support us in these joygasmic experiences and hold the space for our grief with a deep compassion and a deep empathy and deep inquiry, like, what more do you need? How can I help you? Those ought to be the questions, like, not like, when are you going to get over this? Like, no.
Are you done crying?
No.
It's like, no, I don't need you to fix anything. Just sit there and breathe.
Yeah.
You're okay, and I'm okay, and I'll come through it. Like, talking about labor prep, it's like, that's what we need, right?
That's what we need. Yeah, grief is the labor of the death coming through us in order to birth again. Second birth is the initiation. So one of the pieces that I want to offer to your listeners is so important. And that is, it is, how do you create your palliative care unit for your own death? How do you create your grief space? How do you create the altar for your grief? How do you do that? And I really want to give a very strong teaching about this, because many of us need to have a go-to called nature, not necessarily a person. So I have a beautiful client who's now a student and has been with me for 5 years, and her go-to in the Dominican Republic is a rock as big as her, and it's looking out in the Caribbean, and it's her go-to. And she used to be really, really like temper tantrum-y of, why can't I go to my mother? Well, your mother's not available. Why can't I go to my father? Well, your father's a cocaine addict. Well, why can't I go to any of my sisters? Well, they're not your go-tos. And so when she found the rock, it was like heaven broke open in that rock. It was, she started to realize the ancestors are in the rock. They're millions of years old in these crystals, in these rocks, in these plants, in these feathers. In my deerskin bundle for my Obsidian Pipe, there's millions of years old of teachings that have no language called English. They have no language called Q. They have no language called Ki. They have no language. They have sound. They have whispers. They have, and we have to find that way. And so the grief wheel. So with permission and respect to my motherline and my fatherline, the first shamans and the medicine people and the Shambhala warriors from which this teaching comes. So the resource for your people is Think Like a Mountain. It's a very thin book, but it really is a book about leadership. Think like a mountain. Think about that. How does a mountain think? By John Seed from Australia, who's still alive, by the way. Arne Ness from Sweden, who's passed on. Thank you so much. And Joanna Macy, who's still alive and a very powerful Buddhist elder in Berkeley, California, in a community. And she has a multiply housed community that she's the elder for. And guess what? Who are they taking to feed there in their community? People on death row. Who who get paroled or paroled from death row, and they're old. And they've been 30 and 40 years in prison. And Joanna Macy has said to her youth, now these are youth getting trained, in permaculture, yes, in gardening, yes, but in learning to look into the eyes and the heart of a man who's been on death row for more of his life than he's been outside of prison. Now, what does that do to a soul? It matures it. No more temper tantrums. It cultivates and renders service to humanity in a way that nothing else can. Nothing else can. So I want to share those pieces because we are slovenly in our grief. We think, well, if we don't get our own way, we're going to, like my client friend and my granddaughters learned how to have temper tantrums. And, both her father and mother, I don't know why my son does it, because he's heard me say no many times, but they're afraid to say no to an almost 6-year-old. Why? Because they're afraid of her temper. Well, what's all that about?
Well,
it's her grief.
It's the unprocessed grief within the parent that says, I can't handle seeing your grief because your grief resonates with my grief. And then all of a sudden I'm going to end up crying on the floor too. Like that. I've lived that.
There you go. And why don't we have a family temper tantrum?
Because
why don't we do that?
Emotions.
Yeah. Why don't we get real with the intelligence of all of this? Yeah. So I'm just going to give one more temper tantrum story, and then I want to go to the grief wheel because I do want to establish the structure for it with thanks to my elders. So my daughter, Kirsty Jane Conway, we had moved to Ottawa from Sault Ste. Marie, and we had gone over to Steinberg's grocery store. And I think she was about maybe 2.5, maybe 3. So grocery stores are designed for parents to get taken by what's on the lower shelves because the kids see only what's on the lower shelves. So they put all the sugary junk food on the lower shelves.
Yeah.
All right. So she doesn't have sugar cereal. She doesn't have colored food coloring in her diet. So we're in the cereal section and she's down there and she's looking at Snap, Crackle, Pop, which is okay. But down there, she's got Honey-O's. And she's got Twix, and they're little beings, they're little characters that are saying like, eat me, eat me, eat me, and turn different colors and have a lot of energy because it is sugar. They have so many messages in the advertising that's absolutely sinful. Absolutely. Wake up, people. It's violating the truth of what our children need. So anyway, she starts I say no, and she lays down. I've never seen her have a temper tantrum. She lays down on her tummy and starts going, no. And then she looks up at me going, like I can hear the telepathy. She goes, I wonder if this is going to work. Like she's in the curiosity of wonder if this is going to work. She's not having a true temper tantrum. She's imitating. So life is the first steps of learning is imitate. So I lie down on my belly and I start doing what she's doing. And I look at her and I go, wow, this is fun. And then she looks at me, she goes, well, it's not fun if you're going to do it. So she stands up and we push the grocery cart and move on. As parents, as mothers, as women, we must have strategies of meet the pain, meet the frustration, meet the sorrow, meet the despair where it is. Yeah. Meet it. No, don't judge it. Don't criticize it. Don't push it away. Don't be like, I don't have time for this. No, make time for this, because if you don't have time when they're little, then what's going to happen when they're teenagers? Slow suicide. Yeah. They're going to have oversexed relationships and not know what sex is about. And they'll do what I saw when I was a grandmother for transformational festivals. I did an opening ceremony at Entheos in northern British Columbia, and it was really interesting. There was 1,500 people there, and Ari Laser was the only one that gave me tobacco. And I thought, well, you're the only one that really truly is an apprentice to an elder. I had my 2 apprentices with me, so they knew damn well what I was doing. And, and they knew I was prepared, and they knew when I fiercely walked into the center of that circle, when my steps moved into that center, my apprentices went to either side of the larger circle to hold space for me. And Ari stepped into the center and gave me tobacco. And I thought, all right, so we have 3 young men that know the importance of respect for a woman. I don't know about 1,500 other people, but we have 3 of them.
Yeah.
And I did the opening ceremony, and Robin Clements and I were asked. He was another one that has respect. He had gradual respect. He does have respect now. We lit the grandfather fire. And then I said, do you realize who you asked to open the ceremonies? And the kids are going, well, no, very few of them have experience with elders. Very, very few of them have experience with woman chief. Very, very, very few have experience with white women who are women indigenous chiefs. So it goes on. And I said, well, you have thunder and lightning here. And so watch what you're doing. It wasn't that I was going to watch them. It was that the storm was going to watch them. So that night, lo and behold, it pours rain, thunders and lightnings on this mountainside in northern British Columbia, and nobody can go out and do drugs. It's pouring rain. So Saturday morning, I'm scheduled to go to Lillooet to go to the International Leadership Gathering. And I get out of the RV of my apprentice and I go to the bathroom, the outhouse, and this one girl comes to me and said, Grandma, if you had not said what you said, if you had not done what you did, I would have allowed myself to be fucked by 100 different men because I had set that as my target when I came to this festival from Vancouver.
Oh.
And I looked at her and I said, I'm your go-to. And she said, yes, you are. And I want that to land. I want that to really land. Yeah. Be bold, be brave, be courageous. Break the silences. Say something. In the face of violence, say something. Yeah. Do something, because the forces of nature are with us. We are the force of nature. So now we're at Spirit Weavers. So I'm going to transit over to Spirit Weavers. So I'm going to transit to the wheel. Yes.
Yeah. You mentioned that this woman called you grandma, and that was something I wanted to touch on here, because I've seen literally probably hundreds of people in our interactions over the years call you grandma, and I'm sure there's many, many more who do. And it's interesting because you talk about how we don't have elders and we don't know what that looks like. And we certainly don't know what indigenously held women's chiefess roles looks like. I don't even know what the proper terms are to describe that, actually, never mind the tobacco and all of these things, right? And it's not that the people who are showing up there were ignorant on purpose. It's just we haven't been past these teachings. And so that's part of why I wanted to have you here, is to share those teachings. And it's interesting because I personally have struggled so hard. I see all these people call you grandma and I go like, hi, Kaariina, nice to meet you, and I see you be gracious with that as well. But I've realized that it's because I saw my grandma once a year for most of my life, less now that I'm an adult. And I didn't actually know what it was to have a grandma at all. And this journey of we don't know who our elders are. We don't know what that relationship is like. We don't know what it's like to have empowered elders. And the journey is when we recognize it, when we see it, then we can, like that woman coming to you going thank you so much for the teaching that you offered. Then we can go, oh, okay. So this is what was missing. This is what I was needing. That was, 2,000 kilometers away while I was a young baby. And this is what was missing when I was a teenager. And this is, that relationship. And so I'm just super grateful for you bringing that power, because we need to, as women, we need to see that powerful feminine voice. And it's lacking in the world right now, for sure.
Well, I think it's lacking in the last couple of generations, but in my generation, it was not lacking. I had a mumu that lived upstairs, even if she died when I was a year old. I had a mumu that I was, I remember hugging her. She was she was maybe 5 feet tall. She was like a little, like the Northern Finns are like Eskimos. So she was really short. And I remember my measurement of my height was because she had at that time 5 children and her breasts would droop down to her waist. And I would hug myself. I would hug her and I'd go in between her breasts and I would go like this, you know, and I would feel her breasts on either side of my head. And my measurement of my growth and development was according to my mumu. So, you know, I think that the grandmother, thank you for recognizing that, the grandmother languaging to call me grandmother or Jima or call me Isomumu or Mumu is a privilege. And I've worked for this. Mm-hmm. And my grandmothers died so that I would be this grandmother. And I really want us to get this. Like my mother was the elder in her lineage, and I am my mother's teacher. Mm-hmm. And so I am the Isumumu, I am the grandmother. And so, yes, it is grandmother Kaariina. And you can change in midstream right now. And from this point on, call me grandmother. And yes, I hear your apology in the midst of all of that. And I think it's important to recognize that Spirit Weavers, when I went to Spirit Weavers, how do I get to all these places? Young people invite me. Mm. I don't volunteer. I don't say, oh, well, you know, have me be the grandmother that opens the ceremony. You know, I volunteer when someone asks me, but they're always young people. Mm. They're always young people. Young people are missing elders. Young people are missing grandmas. Young people are missing go-tos. A cell phone is not a go-to. FaceTime is not a go-to. Computer is not a, you know, these little books. My granddaughter's into making videos here, and I feel like I have to meet her where that is. And then when she gets her like 2 or 3 videos done, then she can put it down and then she can actually play in my garden. Hmm. But I don't say put it away yet. You know, I feel like she's got to run the wave through. Mm-hmm. So when I went to Spirit Weavers at the invitation of Hannah Germstad, Hannah's invocation was, Grandma, they need someone like you. Hmm. Now, who is someone like me? Well, there's only someone like this. So I'm the only one that's like this. Mm-hmm. So yes, there are other grandmothers, but we're all parts of aspects of the crystal of all the grandmothers. We're all parts of this mandala of women, which I pulled. And so we're all parts of this mandala of woman grandmother. We're all parts of the great grandmother. We're all parts of Tonantzin. We're all parts of Pachamama. We're all parts of the physical earth. We're parts of the land and the territory, the Galakalaks and the territory of the Namgi. We're part of this teaching. We're not separate from it. And the commonality, and it was very clear in this journey that I'm about to take your people and you on with Maria Stark, the commonality is woman's blood. Mm. It's the blood that brings us here. It's the blood. Yeah. So there's no other else to go other than let's go into the blood. So I'm just going to invite you to relax, and I'm going to take you on a little journey, and I'm going to help you to establish that, number one, you're not alone. Number two, you have sounds and songs of your womb that are wanting to be sung. Number three, that you're walking in the moccasins, the bare feet, the sandals, shoes, and the boots of hundreds and thousands of women who are breaking the silences. And lastly, there is a structure called a wheel, a circle in the middle of nature that you will always be able to resource when you step into your pain. Know that it's not personal. It's your ancestral body of grief, unfelt, unmet, untouched, unrespected. So taking a deep breath, just imagine that you're traveling with my voice as your guide. Thank you so much for respecting my voice as your guide in this moment. And as you breathe, know that the only thing you need to do is breathe with the Creator. That you and the Creator are breathing the same breath. The breath that you're breathing now is the breath of your ancestors. The breath that you're breathing now is the breath of 2,000-year-old trees. The breath that you're breathing right now is the breath of our homelands and our mother tongues. The breath that we are breathing right now is the breath of the earth itself. 6 billion years of breathing in space. Give yourself time to settle in space, in time, in your buttocks, in your body, through your breath. Let your breath be a way of entering within the sacred temple known as your body. There's nothing you need to do. There's no checklist. There's no need to take notes. There's nowhere else to go. There's nothing else to do. Just listen to a grandmother guiding you on a journey into your grief, into the pain of your ancestors. Like all journeys, it begins, it has a middle, and it has an ending. I reassure you, when you enter, we will not abandon you. We will not avoid your experience. We will walk with you. We will hold you. We will embrace you. Imagine that you're moving like a flock of geese, like a herd of buffalo, like a herd of reindeer towards a circle in the middle of the North Meadows in the wilderness. You're walking alongside a river. Is your river flowing swiftly? Is your river drying up? Is there drought in your riverbed? What is your river like? You're moving with women with wings. You're moving with women with antlers. You're moving with women with tusks. You're moving in the divine feminine, all moving to a wheel called grief. You are met at the cervical ring of this wheel by two women, one on either side of you. One is black, and the whites of her eyes are yellow, and her brown eyes are so deep that you sink into Africa. And the other is yellow, a cheerful, smiling oriental face with high cheekbones and a little nose, and she's shorter than the black sister. But the yellow and the black are your sisters, and they smudge you with sage. They smudge you with vulture feathers. They smudge you knowing the map of these transformer points on your body to remove from you that which has been burdening you. Pain, suffering, sorrow, despair, fear of a future that may never happen the way the past was. So you move through this narrow passage, let's call it the vagina, the great vase, and you look behind you and there's many, many other women. And you look ahead of you and there's many women waiting for you. You're not alone. You're re-entering the great sacred womb of grief. Remembering grief was part of conception because you had to leave divine time and space in order to be conceived. The first point of grief. And you go to your left, to the east, and there's a grandmother opposite you, to the west of women, and a grandmother to the north of you, a grandmother to the south of you, and a grandmother to the east of you. The grandmothers are holding the space, and beyond them are grandfathers. Grandfathers are the space holders. They love the grandmothers. In fact, they adore grandmothers. Grandmothers and grandfathers are very affectionate in this grief wheel because they want their children and grandchildren to be exposed to the other side of pain, the other side of grief. So the grandmothers are offering different experiences at each of the directions. Come with us to confusion and stand there. Maria, with her guitar, rattles and sings a song. I honor my lineage. I honor this cycle. I honor this spiral of life. And that's our theme song throughout this whole journey. I'm honoring that it's a spiral of descent and ascension. I'm honoring that it's a cycle of beginning, middle, and end. And I'm honoring that everything that we thought was is no longer in this moment. And allow yourself to feel confusion in the East. Grandmother of the East shows you confusion. She has created a confusion of a mandala. There's no order in the East. There's no order. It's confusing. There's a bunch of twigs and a bunch of dead leaves and a bunch of dead flowers, and there's feathers and there's a profusion of confusion, but there's no sorting it out. It just is confusion. And you are invited, all of you listening to this podcast, you are invited to rest and relax in confusion. Do nothing. Do nothing in confusion. Do nothing. Experience mental confusion. Digest it. Where does it live in your body? Relax into it. Where does it live in your soul? Realize that there may be someone to your left, your mother's side, or to your right, your father's side, who offered you the amoebas and parasites of confusion that eat up your creativity. Who was that being that never rested in confusion, that controlled when they became confused? And be that being. Sit in that being's confusion. Discreate your separation from confusion. And be it in empathy, in compassion. Expand, explore what was so confusing for that being. What triggered confusion? What activated the controller, the critic, the judge that tried to control and take over when there was confusion? And own your own strategy. That you created a strategy to defend against confusion rather than to sit in confusion. And hear Maria's rattle. Rattle your bones. This is confusion in the spiral of life. This is confusion in the cycles of life. This is confusion. And look now, the wheel is completely circled by women. All of the women have come in the cervical ring, smudged by the black and the yellow. All of the women have come and met a grandmother in the east, the south, the west, and the north. And I, Grandmother Kaariina, today I'm sitting in the west. I shall sit in the west of women. And there's a grandmother in each of these directions. And in front of these grandmothers are symbolic representations, little altars to how grief manifests. And women have moved to a direction that is most telling for them. It's like Edgar Allan Poe's story, The Telltale Heart. If your heart is going blub, 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 at a certain direction, go there. Listen to your heart. If your heart is going blub, 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 and hopping out of your chest, go there. Break the silence. Listen to your heart. Listen to the heart that guides you. Not love and expansive, easy flowing, but listen to the blub, 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 blub. Listen to how the heart wants to bubble up. So all of these women are gathered now. There's 35 to 40 women. The songs have been sung. And now Grandmother Kaariina rises from the west and moves into the center of the circle and asks, who here is bleeding blood? Out of those 35 to 40 women, we have at least 6 or 7 women who are currently bleeding. Who here has brought blood? Because on the portfolio of initiations, it says, if you are currently bleeding, bring your blood to the grief wheel. And so there are women who come who bring blood in mason jars. Now we have 10 to 12 women who offer their blood. These 10 to 12 women use their hands in the center of this grief wheel and they dig a hole 12 inches deep. They dig a hole into Mother Earth, into Pachamama, into Madre Tierra, into Lady Gaia. They dig a hole, not to extract, not to take from, not to hide bodies in caskets, but to give back to. And each woman puts a piece of the earth in front of her and pours her blood back to the mother, back to her, who bleeds through her rivers, who bleeds through her rivers, who bleeds through her rivers for us. There is a stillness in our circle as we are touched deeply by the knowing of blood shed for us, as we shed blood for our men to be born, for our children to come. We shed blood as though it were a wound rather than a gift, a cycle, a story, a way of giving back to her. The women slowly take the earth, touch it to their hands, to their hearts, and to their wombs. The heart is the second heart, the womb is the first heart, and put the earth back on top of the blood. They look at each other. Some of them weep. Some of them are sobbing, deeply touched by this initiation. And some look at Grandmother Kaariina and offer a stripe of their blood to my third eye, to my cheeks, to the tip of my cute nose, and 3 stripes to my chin. Some touch my throat and my heart with blood. I am initiated once again, for I am a woman who holds blood, but now is one with blood again. The youth initiating the elders. The women return to the circle, and the grief wheel unfolds as there is drumming and drumming and drumming and drumming, like the pulse of a large one-hearted woman of the earth drumming. And suddenly, one woman screams in the north, anger, rage, fury. And another woman collapses in the west in despair, uncontrollably sobbing even more. And another wraps herself up like a cocoon in the south of scaredness, not knowing how to release herself in this fetal position. And another in confusion, doesn't know where to go and wants to leave the circle, but there's no going back because we are in the womb of grief. We are in this time of grief, of graveyards to tombstones to yew trees. We are in the grief of the forests. We are in the grief of the loss of 300-year-old trees. We're in the grief of damming the Columbia River. We're in the grief of hospitalization and surgicalization and C-sections for deliveries of babies with mothers' feet in steel feeling only coldness, as though it were an operating table and an operating room that is a performance for the sake of doctors, for the sake of anesthesiologists, not in home and bed and water, in love, not held by momos and grandmothers and midwives and doulas, and not breathed by men who conceived these babies. The grief is enormous. It's generations of grief. It's an activation for all women to experience grief, of being masked, of being locked down, of being shut down, of being jabbed, of being spiked, being hurt, of being violated, being told this is a mandate, just obey, or else, of being threatened with the loss of jobs and money and income to pay rent or mortgages or buy food for children because women have forgotten the garden of grandmothers. Women are dependent and codependent on men who create security through finances, but guess what? Money is not the answer. It's food from the forests, it's foraging, it's gardening, it's community. It's like my village in Fintown in Sault Ste. Marie. It's build a long table and everybody gets fed. Put the soup pots back on the stoves. For God's sake, emerge from this domination and this domineering of a hurt masculine, of a wounded man, and be the woman who is the go-to for this man. Be the grandma, be the ancestor who initiates this man to his pain, to his grief. But the only way you can do it is to feel your own. There's no avoiding. This is our experience, as confusing as it is. There too is the South. Walk there to the grandmother. This grandmother of the South has warm blankies and stuffed animals. This grandmother is a cuddly one. She's chubby and cute, but more importantly, she's a go-to in the South. She sees how scared you are to walk from confusion to scaredness. She sees how afraid you are that this future may never unfold. She sees this, and she greets you and your sisters with her blankies. She says, choose your stuffy. If you want a bottle, I'll give you a bottle. It's scary now. If you want to cuddle on my lap, sit on my lap. I know how scared it is for you to be a woman, for you to be a child, for you to be conceived in these times, for you to come from the stars and the other nations, and for you to, how can you rest in scaredness? And she wraps you up. She shows you how to turn on the right side of your body and bring your knees to your chest and wrap your arms around your knees. And she wraps you and your sisters up and sings and rocks to you. Maria sings another song. I honor my lineage. This is a spiral. This is a cycle. But this is grief. And this is scaredness. There are women who've been through scaredness who come. They are the women who've smudged you. Black like the night, yellow like the rising sun. And they come and rock the women who are scared. One hand on the left hip and another hand on the left shoulder. The feminine is touched. The masculine is surrendered to the earth. And they rock you. They coddle you. And this is not spoiling, my darlings. This is acceptance. This is surrender to scaredness. This is meeting fear. This is being held, and embraced. And so moments and moments and moments pass. This origination journey, this usually takes 3 hours. So just know that I'm moving fairly quickly through it. When you're ready to establish this space for yourself, take time. The time is now to expand into the space. So when you feel complete, look to your grandmother and give thanks. As you gave thanks to the grandmother of confusion, give thanks to the grandmother of scaredness. For she has held you. She has rocked you. She has loved you. Embrace your sisters, black and yellow, white and red. I often say they're blue and purple and green as well. And know that you are met and held, honored, respected, and able now to respond to others who are confused, others who are scared. And now come to Grandmother Kaariina in the West. This is the place of suicide, my darlings. This is the place of the slow killing of the soul purpose. This is the place of despair. And when women feel despair, women tend to take big razors to their wrists, take knives to their hands. Women tend to eat horrid food, go to A&W and go to McDonald's and drink coffee from Tim Hortons. Women go too fast over the west door of grief rather than sink into despair, because women are afraid of death. Women, you see, want to control the descent. Don't you see they want to control the descent of the fetus down? When labor begins, they want this labor to end, because few people can say to people who are laboring, this too will pass. This is called labor. This is a contraction. Let's breathe differently. So because women are not entrained by doulas and midwives to breathe through despair, women avoid despair. Women don't relax into despair. Women aren't brought to the water's edge in despair. Women aren't wrapped with warm blankets, sat in water, and let howl in despair with knees to the chest to labor and deliver in the river of lifetimes. Women aren't remembered to the remembering of the ancient ways of the mother. Despair. Who will take care of my despair? Grandmother Kaariina will. I am your go-to here in the West. Come into the dark womb. It's hot. I've prepared a sweat lodge for you. It's the shape of a dome. It has a star at the top. There's a fire in the front, and in the center is a hole. Women have poured blood into that hole for you. Bring your despair here. Bring your labor here. Bring your contractions here. Bring the confusion, scaredness, and the despair here. That you will die? Yes, you will. You will pass through this portal. This is an initiation. Come. The grandmothers come one at a time, but this time there's hot rocks. Thousands of years old of rocks. No river rocks because they break in a sweat lodge. They are rocks, like the firmament of the earth. They are rocks. And there is a sister who comes and serves you in your despair lodge. The sister has a pitchfork and brings one rock at a time, and the grandmother puts sage onto the rocks, puts palo santos onto the rocks, puts sweetgrass onto the rocks, pours frankincense, incense, and myrrh onto the rocks to be rebirthed. And you are howling in your pain. Your knees are to your chest, and grandmother says, grab the structure of this lodge. Reach up, grab it. And another sister on one side and the other sister on the other side says, sister, breathe with us. And when you're ready, they let you go and invite you to lie down. But this time you lie down with the back, your scapula, your neck and shoulders on a womb of a woman who's already delivered children. And you feel the pulse of her belly on the back of your skull. And you know you are held in the pelvic basin of a woman who trusts, who knows, who respects, who is able to respond to your need, your journey, your contraction, your despair. Will this contraction ever end? Yes, she never says it. She is it. She never says a word. She is your pelvic bowl breath, breathing you, breathing trust, breathing fierce faith into your body, laboring in despair. Will this pain ever end? Yes. Her body breathes yes. The other sister holds your womb laboring, holds your legs stroking, holds all of you loving you. And lo and behold, everything finally ends. Contraction, despair, and the final urge to push is completed. The final urge to push completes the cycle of despair forever. No more despair. For your new being, your new self, your new infant, your new presence, your expanded soul purpose is now here, birthed out of despair. And every single sister in this Westgate Lodge celebrates every single other sister with embraces and love and spit and saliva and afterbirth and yes, tears of joy and rapture and bliss, and prayers are spontaneously spouted from the roof of the sweat lodge to the rest of the grief wheel. We have come forth. We are here. And nothing is left to say but emerge. And dirty, sweaty, tear-streaked blood splayed on open legs. The birth has ended, the cycle has ended, and something new has been innovated, initiated, and come through. And who is there for you coming out of the lodge but the black woman and the yellow woman and the purple woman and the red woman and the white woman and all these other women who've been there in despair before you? And they say, yes, you are here. You are here. Welcome. You are here. And the north gate is open, and the grandmother of the north gate says, but there's more here. There's more here. The grief is not complete yet. And so you joyously, tentatively go to the north. What is here? What could be more? I thought I was complete. What could be more? And the grandmother of the north looks and says, colibri, hummingbird, child, girl, woman, baby, infant, come. There's more. It's called the future. It's called frustration. It's called anger. It's called rage. It's called future fury. It's called, what if your child was killed by a bus at 9 years old and never fulfilled her purpose? It's called, what if your initiation of your project never launched itself into the freedom to be fully itself? Frustration. It's called, What if that man is unfaithful and does not stay with you and does not know how to hold your grief and does not understand your despair or scaredness for your child, for your project, for your future? And what if he leaves and abandons? Rage. What happens when a government declares hospitalization and pharmaceuticalization and jabs as a mandate? And yet you know instinctually in your animal skin, in all of your knowing, in all of your being, that you will never be violated. Can you find your no and rage it with the fierceness and give up commodities and give up conveniences and give up fake eyelashes and toxic eyebrows and hair coloring? And can you live simply and feed others with your fierce knowing that this is a new future of ancient wisdom? This is the new future of ancient wisdom. This is a new way of ancient lineages of grandmothers and great-grandfathers and ancient mother tongues that sound foreign to the English language, sound even foreign to Chinese and African dialects, sound foreign to the Kalahari because it is the language of animals. It is the language of the stillness of mountains. It is the language of the fire of volcanoes. It is the language of a waterfall. It is the language of steel blue ice falling off the edges of glaciers in the Antarctic. And penguins are the only one hearing it. But penguins take care of their young. Penguins take care of their young as a whole group. Penguins, male and female, care for their young. What have we forgotten that we are so frustrated about? We are so confused, so scared, so in despair because we have forgotten, and that is the ultimate grief. We have not expanded enough. We have not reached backwards enough to remember. We have not gone higher enough to know the divine ways. We have not got deep into the earth enough to listen to her. We have not sat at the roots of a 2,000-year-old tree or embraced with 12 women a 300-year-old cedar in Paradise Valley, British Columbia. We have not gone top of Crystal Mountain in Nelson, BC, and gathered crystals at the creek and brought them to the top to the sweat lodges. We have not listened to the copper tube that goes down that mountain and listened to what the mountain says. We have not listened to the mountains. We are not leaders. And that's our anger, frustration, and rage because we know we are leaders. We are the leadership of the future because we have birthed everything that is here on this planet has come through either a C-section, unfortunately, or a cervical ring. And we are the leadership. In our one body womb, we are leaders. Nursing what? What are we nursing, nourishing, nurturing? Are we the go-tos? We are grieving the loss of our own soul's purpose. And this is the grief of woman. One ripple into a wave, into a rising, cresting wave, into a crashing tsunami of grief on the edges of our lives that we cannot run away from. We cannot ever avoid the responsiveness and the ability to respond to what's happening now on planet Earth. The collective grief, the collective avoidance of experiencing the trauma of our ancestors, and thus the trauma of women, the trauma of children, the trauma of nature itself. So now we are at the end of the grief wheel. Look there at every single woman, 35 to 40, every single one is an aspect of your soul. Every single one knows grief. Recognize her, resonate with her, hold her, love her. Be enraptured by her presence on the planet. She is real. Touch her. She has put blood into the center of this wheel, back into the earth to teach you, give your blood. Look at these grandmothers, east, south, west, north, and the grandfathers holding space. Listen to your river, the river of all lifetimes. Look at the trees who've held space for you, the rocks who've sacrificed themselves for you. The fire of your ignition is needed here. Ignite your passion to be here, to be alive, to be fiercely alive. And when you're ready, listen to this recording over and over and over again. Walk your wheel. Grieve. We hold you. We love you. We embrace you. Only women can grieve this way with women. No man can know this. Only women. Men know men's grief until men return to their wombs, their mothers, and grieve together, and grieve the loss of mother tongue and motherland and mother's ways. The way through for men is through grandmothers who have rebirthed many men through her breasts and through her cervical ring. She has labored them in the lodges. When you men are ready, grandmothers are here. We were born for this. For now, sisters. For now, daughters, granddaughters, great-granddaughters, great-great-great-granddaughters. You are women of this wisdom. You are women of this ancient accord. Trust the crystal clarity of these transmissions. They were guided and directed for you to come forth, to come home, to be here, to be now. The vagina, the earth vase opens. 3, 4 at a time, you leave this womb circle space of grief. You are smudged again, but this time by a red and white woman, indigenous to the land. Seneca, Anishinabe, Ojibwa, Huron, Chippewa, Sinex, Lakota, Dakota, Squamish, Stutland. You are here being smudged by the indigenous. Only through your grief will they recognize you. Only through the grief of what we have done to the land will you be held and embraced. The white woman smudges because she has grieved. She is a sister of the red, and together they create a pink ray, the pink of rhodochrosite, the pink of rhodonite, the pink of rosy quartz. Receive our love, for you are loved. And when you leave the cervical ring of this grief wheel, know that you will never be the same. You will never look at yourself in a mirror the same. You will never look at a woman the same. You will never touch your child in the same way, nor will you ever touch your man in the same way. For you are forever grieved and forever birthed and forever embraced, just as you are. For all our relations, return to the trees, return to where you are. Touch your fingers, touch your toes, touch your nose. Understand that you have been flicked by the flicker's feathers. Touch your ears, touch the top of your head, and really touch your fontanelle so that you can be here now. Be here now in your body. In this body, it's safe to be in the temple. It's safe to be embodied. It's safe to be here now. It's safe to be a leader, darlings. It's safe to join with your elders. And it's safe, certainly, to call us grandmothers, for you're the future grandmothers. Know yourself in us, for we are united in our soul's purpose today. For all our relations, we thank you, to the above, to the deep within, to the below, and to all of the directions, to the Shambhala warrior training, to Trungpa Rinpoche, who brought it from the Himalayas, to those who maintain the teachings in Shambhala in the Himalayas. Om Tara. Be fierce. Go in peace. My mission has been fulfilled in this journey today. My purpose has been fulfilled. I see your eyes sparkling with tears. Make sure you have time just for you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Would you like to do closure with a song?
Yes.
We always return to song, by the way. And we return to gatherings and we return to unstoppable joy.
Because on the other side of the grief wheel, unstoppable.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for your time today, Grandmother Kaariina. Thank you so much. I know that I am so grateful for the continuing offering of the Authentic Abundancia group. I'll make sure there's ways for people to connect with you through all the online beautifulness so that they can continue to journey with you. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I forgot to mention that. I'm going to advocate. So until October the 8th, and I know it'll take a while for this to be out, but until October the 8th, I'm still receiving one-to-one applications for Chaos into Service. And it's a commitment wheel. And I'm still, I'm open to receive what I'm creating as a 6-month expansion series of teachings starting the end of next week. So it'll be 17th, 18th, 19th of October. We're accepting applications. It will be for a very intimate journey, an intimate small group. It will be really about learning how to live in community. And you will have one-to-ones with me, but more it's about community work. And it's taking you through 21 of my templates to prepare you to be a leader, to prepare you to be a hunter-gatherer, to prepare you to be a resourceful go-to person for your family, for your larger community, and for this planet itself. And it's my magnus opus. It's really the first time I've really put it all together. And I am unstoppably joyous that it's all together. And beautiful Jessica Mortel in Western Mass and I are creating a journey called 13 Months of Celibacy. It's to clear the womb wounds of women like the one I met at the festival and other women who absolutely don't know how to say no and don't trust their cycles and don't know when the fertility time is or when, how to please ourselves before we try to please men. And so it's moons. It's a commitment to celibacy. We'll create 13 moons and a belt that you'll wear. It's an amazing journey. It's bi-weekly, and Jessica is our honesty coach, and she's phenomenally honest. So she's wonderful. And then we have Authentic Abundance starting this Thursday for another 21 days, which will repeat in December, and we'll repeat again 6 times next year for 2022. And I am creating a grief wheel facilitators training with Hilary Lake, a divinity ordained minister from Harvard, which I just totally love. And she's living on the shores of Lake Michigan right now with her aging mother and father and has really personal experience of preparing the death gate. And so we have not yet developed the full curriculum, but we'll be offering that the 3rd or 4th week of October and offering it specifically for people called to facilitate the grief wheel, again, in their families, in communities, and on the planet. And that's it.
Beautiful. So many wonderful teachings. Again, thank you. Time for some unstoppable joy.
Let's do it. Thank you so much, Elena. Thank you, family hearters. Thank you to your mother line and father line. Thank you so much.
Indeed.
I wonder and burst into unstoppable joy. I wonder what might happen if all the stars and all the skies were strung together with common thread, shown together with common light, the light of
Of
love.
life
And
that I am, that I am.
stop
That I am, that I am, that I am.
create a light. I
That I am, that I am, that I am.
stop. I
That I am, that I am.
stop. Wonder what might happen if all the eyes began to see the mystery of love unfolding in the perfection of you and me. I wonder what might happen if all the hearts that felt the pulse would dance together to the rhythm of one song and sing united as one voice, the voice of love. I am in love, unstoppable. I am in I am in joy, unstoppable joy. I am unstoppable.
Joy, 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 joy. Hmm. I played that for my almost 6-year-old granddaughter, Talal Autumn Conway, last year, and I played it in my car. And I had shown her the video of Maria with those beautiful yellow wings, and she said, "I want wings like that." So of course she got wings like that. And I played it for her in my car, and she looked at me and she said, "Omi, you love this woman, don't you?" And I said, "I surely do." And then she said, "And this woman really loves you." And I said, "Yes, she surely does." So I want to give thanks to Maria Stark, to her beautiful husband and partner, for his really profound teachings to the Unitarian Universalist Church, and for both of them living a life of great principle. And I honestly, my work is amplified because of people like Maria and her husband. Thank you so much. Slow down. Sit on the back of a turtle. Ride the turtle as you go around the wheel. When you need to retreat, go within. When you're ready to move on, move on. It's your rhythm. Trust your rhythm. Trust your journey. And know that you're loved. Forever, unstoppable, joyously loved.
Well, that was awesome. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end.
How easily can you imagine that this experience is integrated already deeply into every cell of your being in such a way that you will begin to notice that you have already been operating from this new behavior for a while, and that it was simply a matter of noticing how much you've already been doing this. You may choose to feel that this moment is the moment that completely and utterly into your body. Or in the days and weeks ahead, getting curious about how fully and completely this experience has transformed your life, realizing that you are at complete choice to choose how you would like to integrate this information into every cell of your being.
Thank you so much for being a part of the Joygasmic Life podcast. And I am so grateful to have you here and be a part of it. If you haven't already, head over to joygasm.me to check out our Joygasmic Birth Blueprint ebook and course, which give you all of the information that you need to become a Joygasmic mama, whether you are postpartum or whether you're expecting your first baby. This course absolutely has tips and tricks for you that will help prepare you for birth, prepare you for the birth of your next child, and prepare you for peaceful and joygasmic mothering on the other side. So absolutely. The way that we do one thing is the way that we do everything. And so by utilizing and beginning to build a practice of joygasmic alchemy, you will absolutely become a better mother and hold space, as I am and as many, many women are, for the enlightenment of the planet. We do that first by working on ourselves and then offering that support and that enlightened nature within ourselves to our families. And then from there, it ripples out. So if you haven't already checked that out, go check that out now. Again, it's joygasm.me. We've also got courses on rescuing your relationship, bulletproof mom, how to be able to handle even the most intense toddler or special needs child later on in life, as well as a multitude of new courses that are coming out. We're absolutely grateful to get to have you as a part of that. And remember, anyone who participates in the funding of the podcast absolutely gets a membership access, which allows you to access the bonus features, the ends of some of our episodes, exercises from our guests, as well as featured free content from them. So super glad to have all of you who are a part of that already here. And thank you so much for being a part of the Joygasmic Life family. If I could leave you with only one tip for how to be an orgasmic, joygasmic mama in this world, the invite would be to really step into and embody the knowledge that you are actually here for a reason, and that reason is to be an enlightened being for your family. They chose you for a reason. They chose you on this consciousness journey for a reason. And you absolutely have the tools and skills to be able to do this. If you're struggling, please reach out. I am more than happy to help people rewire what's going on in their brain, create a new story, and create a more powerful experience so you can be the kind of mama for your kids that you really have dreamed of. You absolutely deserve it, and your children absolutely deserve it. I look forward to getting to know you more, and I look forward to co-creating through the membership content. Have a beautiful day, and we'll see you on the next podcast.